Welcome to the ELA video series installment for reading literature standards. Note that there are some audio texts in these, meaning students only listen to these texts instead of reading them. But in order to save time, I didn't include all of these exercises, but please be aware that they are there on the practice test and take a look at them sometime. Before we begin, be sure to go to our Moodle site and take a look at the packet of sample test items for this strand of standards. Try to answer those and then come back and compare your thinking to mine. Here begins our grade 6 practice test items. In number 9, students will have to find textual evidence, even though it doesn't explicitly say the words textual evidence. Teach students that details from the text are textual evidence. The correct answer is A. In number 10, students need to be able to find the central idea or main idea of the text. This is where it is really important that they are able to summarize and paraphrase, meaning that Tarzan and Jane's skill would really come in handy here. The correct answer is B. Number 11 is harder than we think because it gives a definition and then students have to go on a hunt for the word that best matches it within that text. I'm thinking you could teach students two things to help them with this type of question. First, teach them that those little italicized letters in parentheses mean the part of speech. In this case, the word they're looking for is a verb. Then, teach them to go find all the words that match that part of speech, all the verbs in this case, and substitute the definition in where they see it fits. So let's try this with the first sentence. First, look for the verbs, was and have seen. If I substitute used for a practical purpose for those verbs, the sentence wouldn't make sense. But when I go to the verb harness and substitute it, it does make sense. So harness is the right answer. Number 12 requires students to write. I'll place the rubric on a future slide. In the meantime, let's check out number 13. Students will need to know that this story is told in the first person point of view. It uses the word I many times throughout this text. Then, students need to study the narrator's thoughts about, actions toward, and words about Libby in order to describe the narrator's feelings about the dog. The answer for part A is A. Students need to pick out the best textual evidence to support their answer in part A. Those pieces of evidence are the first, fourth, and fifth options here in part B. As promised, here's a scoring rubric to earn a 2, which is the highest number of points for number 12. Students need to understand how to find details that lead them to infer how the first-person narrator feels about her dog. Stop here, maybe stop the video, and notice the use of textual evidence in the exemplar text. To successfully answer number 14, students need to first understand what tight-lipped grin means. Notice how the use of smile in the text is actually figurative language, a metaphor for the shape the leash should take while walking the dog. Students need to be able to visualize what it looks like to grin with tight lips, then transfer that over to the leash. Tight-lipped isn't relaxed and happy. The two answers are the first option and the fifth option. Students need to recognize the use of figurative language again here in number 15. If students can visualize what a puppy looks like when she bounces around like a kangaroo and runs really fast, then they'll understand how Libby has a lot of energy. The best answer here is D. Sorry, 7th grade teachers, unless I fell asleep at the wheel, I didn't spot any literary text in the sample test. So after viewing the expectations for 6th grade students, check out your reading literature standards to see how the rigor might be bumped up in the 7th grade test. And that takes us to the grade 8 practice test items. In order to successfully answer number 9, students will need to know something about characterization. How does an author give clues to help the reader understand who the character is as a person? What kinds of things does a character say and do? What does the character or the narrator say about the character? Students will need to understand how to build a character. Here, the answer is D. Students will need to know how to find a text's theme in number 10. I recommend teaching students this formula for finding theme. Character plus conflict plus the character's response to the conflict. That response will likely teach us the moral of the story. The correct answer here is in the second paragraph. He firmly believed that if he didn't know what came next, he ought to just wait until it came to him. There's a clue that this is a lesson to learn here, the words "he firmly believed." While an author isn't always that obvious, it is something to look for in future text. I think the best way to tackle number 11, if students don't know the underlined word, is to take the answer options and substitute them in for the underlined word. They would let the artist toss in different things? No. They would let the cyclist toss in different things? No. They would let the observers toss in different things? That likely makes sense. So the answer here is C. To do number 12, students need to know how to draw conclusions. They need to know how to add up all the textual evidence that an author gives us to draw conclusions. Here's the scoring rubric for number 12. Please pause the video here to see how students will be scored in number 12. Note the exemplar and how the exemplar writer uses textual evidence. To do number 13, students need to know what a flashback is and why the author might use a flashback. Talking about author's purpose and intentions seems to be an important theme that runs through both the informational text and literature text sample test items. The answer to part A is B. In part B, the sentence that best supports that is the one that starts with "Suddenly Stuart was flying" at the beginning of the second paragraph. For number 14, something that students should understand is how authors sometimes develop characters by having them interact with other characters. In other words, we learn a lot about characters by the way they treat others. The best answer here is D. In order to answer number 15, students will need to know certain literary devices: flashback, irony, and characterization. The answers here are the second and fourth options. That brings us to the end of our reading literary text sample test items. I was struck while making these two reading videos, the one for this and also for informational text, by how much more time was devoted by the test writers to the informational text items. We really need to call upon our content area teammates to help support student skill development in informational text. We can work on developing skills reading literary text in the ELA classroom if our teammates will focus more on that informational text. Speaking of informational text, make sure you check out that video next. Thanks.